Revelations football great Polly Farmer battled the degenerative brain disease, CTE, has shocked the AFL world today. For more on this, we're joined live by Glen Quartermain. He's the sports editor at the West Australian. Appreciate your time, Glen. I know you broke this story on the front page of the West today and you've been working on it for a long time, I know. Take us through the process first of getting to this diagnosis.
Well, the first thing that we should say is it's a really courageous move from the Farmer family, Brett, Dean and Kim, Polly's kids. It wasn't an easy decision to make, to have Polly's brain examined, but they thought the greater good was what it could produce going forward. And I think we've seen today already with the reaction that it's going in the right direction. It's a insidious illness, CTE. They don't know a lot about it, and sadly they need more cases of it, and it's only a post-mortem situation where you can see CTE under a slide. So I think the more cases they have, the more they'll know about it. The ultimate goal being some sort of a treatment of it in a living person, because this is an insidious outcome, and it's really about. It's about concussion, but the real story behind this is about the subconcussive knocks, those repeated head knocks over a long period of time, and that's what the AFL now has to look at.
And have we seen a response yet from the AFL?
We haven't seen a response yet. Look, the AFL has been really stringent on concussion. They got really serious about it in about 2008 when they started making the penalties for head-high contact much stricter. The head is now sacrosanct in the AFL. You hit the head, you're going to be paid the penalty.
So it should be.
So it should be. I think so. I think the head is sacrosanct. That's the right way to treat it. This is about. It's not so much about the major concussions that are sustained and how they're treated. They've got that pretty well right. It's about the subconcussive knocks. I think a key element to the Polly Farmer story I wrote this morning, broke in the West Australian this morning, was the fact that Polly Farmer did not miss a game with concussion. So you're talking about a great of the game, a footballer who, when he walked onto a field, the opposition just wanted to stop. You stop Polly, you stop Geelong, you stop West Perth, you stop East Perth, you stop Western Australia. So he was a target for a long period of time. You're talking 20 years at the elite level, but you're also talking, before he played for East Perth, he had 2 years as a kid, as a 17-year-old, playing Saturday and Sunday football against men. So you can say 4 seasons in 2 years before he even got to that state elite level. That's a long time to be putting yourself out there. The correlation between the NFL players we've seen in the US, the AFL player, now Polly Farmer, and the 3 NRL players who've been diagnosed with CTE post-mortem, the correlation between them all was long careers, repeated subconcussive knocks.
We have seen quite a lot of movement on this in the US, haven't we? They're really starting to take action there.
Of course. Mike Webster. It's all started with Mike Webster in 2002 when he died, and then Omalu, the pathologist, the coroner, who in 2005 released a paper which we basically CTE's been around for a long time. It was basically diagnosed as punch drunk syndrome in the 1920s. And we're talking about boxers who post-career were struggling with memory loss and what have you. It's been around for a long time. It wasn't until the 2000s when it was diagnosed as CTE in the NFL players. We've seen the lawsuits there, $750 million US. They're talking it'll get up to $1 billion. There is a group action of former VFL players, Greg Williams, John Platten, John Barnes, they're all signatories to that, and we'll see where that goes in the future. I think importantly, the AFL needs to act now on the subconcussive side of it, as well as the concussion elements.
And what exactly needs to change, do you think?
Well, as I said, I think they've got the concussion side of it right. The head is sacrosanct now in football. I think they need to look at the treatment of subconcussive knocks. So you get, if you're now, the way it works now, you're concussed on a footy field, the club doctor will look at you at the boundary line. They look at 5 different camera angles. There's tests they carry out on you. If you're deemed to be concussed, you don't play that week. You take no further part in that game. You are then tested during the week, and if you are concussed, you're not playing that week. I think what they need to do is, but that's concussion. I think they need to look at a player who's been hit repeatedly and look at if there are any subconcussive elements to it. I think they need to look at that going forward. We already see in junior football, helmets are worn, tackling is not full tackling till later years. So there are moves afoot. We want to see, it's a great game, Aussie rules. We don't want the Aussie rules to change, but I think we now know enough about head injuries to act on it. I think we need to look at that.
And just on the personal level for Polly Farmer, do we know, did he suspect that this was the case? Did his family have their suspicions?
Well, I think Brett was the first one of his children to raise it, and he did suspect it. I think particularly looking at all the action taking place in the US, and sort of the penny dropped a bit, and he thought, Dad's got a lot of this stuff. So I don't think Polly was suffering from Alzheimer's as well as CTE. His Alzheimer's was diagnosed as intermediate. His CTE was diagnosed as severe. So there's 4 stages of it. There's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Polly was a 3, and in fact Professor Michael Buckland, who carried out the examination, classified him as a 3.5, and he said it was the most severe case he's seen. So, you know, Polly suffered. His kids have told me that. He was suffering, and you're talking from his early 60s right up until his death when he was 84. But again, you're talking about a courageous, towering figure who just never showed that he was hurt.
No.
And Kim told me very compassionately last week that even up until Polly's death, he just didn't complain, and so he carried a lot of this stuff. You know, heaven knows what he was suffering, but it wouldn't have been a great place to be.